Welcome, everyone. I am Casey Robertson. I am a board member of the National Parents of Blind Children's Board, and we would like to welcome you tonight to our third Thursday webinar. And yes, I know this is the fourth Thursday. We had to move our webinar out a little bit so that participants could take part in other NFB activities that were taking place last Thursday. So we welcome you tonight on the fourth Thursday. And we have a great topic tonight, Spring into Movement. We have several people that are going to speak with us tonight about sports and moving. As the weather is getting warmer and we're able to get outside more, we want to get our kids moving. We want our blind students and our blind kids to be out and moving and take part in sports, because we know movement leads to exploration, and exploration leads to experiences, and experiences lead to cognition, and cognition leads to wonderfully learning blind students. So tonight we have Katie Olson, that's a student at Louisiana Tech University. We have the fabulous Melissa Riccobono. We have Abby Duffy, and we have Kristen Sims that's going to speak with us. We also have some fabulous door prizes in between the speakers. So be sure to stay on and stay attentive to the speakers, because we have several door prizes and everybody loves those door prizes. Each door prize will be $25 gift certificate to Amazon. So who can't use an Amazon gift certificate? So Katie, we have you on tonight, and I would like to welcome you to speak to us about movement and sports. And I'm just going to let you introduce yourself. And that for a fabulous Louisiana Tech student, we would just let you introduce yourself here. So you're free to unmute. If the host will allow Katie Olson to unmute. Oh. There you go.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Hi, welcome everyone. It's great to be here with you all tonight, and this is a topic I'm really excited about. So, yeah, as Casey said, my name is Katie Olson, and I am a current student at Louisiana Tech University, and I am studying to receive my master's in orientation and mobility. I'm getting ready to start my internship this summer, and then we'll be graduating with my master's and certificate in August. So just wrapping everything up, and it's been a really great experience. I've been learning quite a bit in this program. So Casey, you want me to just jump into what we're talking about? Or are we just doing introductions right now? Okay, I can just go ahead and get started.
Katie, I'm sorry I couldn't unmute. Yes, please just go ahead and get started.
Okay, perfect. All right, so yeah, exercise, fitness, movement, sports, these have always been a big part of my life. So starting from a really early age, my dad is very active and is very into sports and wellness. So my sister and I are both blind. We both have a genetic eye condition that causes us to be blind. And so we were always encouraged from a very young age to learn some of those like very early sports skills. So I remember being out in our front yard and my dad would have us be hitting golf balls across the street. We live kind of out by a state park in Iowa. That's where my parents are still living now. And so just whether it was hitting golf balls or shooting hoops, we had a basketball hoop at our house. We did a lot of roller skating, ice skating, a lot of different skills that kids at our age were doing. And I think that from an early age, my dad taught us that we didn't have to be good at these things, but we had to try them. And I think that it was really important that he introduced us to a wide variety of these different activities so that we could kind of figure out what we enjoyed the most and where our strengths were. And just really above all else, just to be moving and to just build up those early skills of activity. So um, my sister and I played outside a lot as kids. So we had neighbor kids that we were really close with that were around our age. So we just play all over the neighborhood. We lived in a pretty residential area that was pretty safe, not a lot of traffic. So we would just kind of run back and forth between our um, neighbor's house. We had a trampoline in our backyard. So we always would make up crazy games to play on the trampoline and um, make obstacle courses, make up dances. We did all kinds of creative things. So I think that that time that I spent with my neighbor kids and my sister wasn't only important for just like being outdoors and being active, but also for the social aspect. I think that kind of building up those social skills with the neighbor kids that we had, and then also just like conflict resolution. I know that sometimes we wouldn't always agree on the rules for the games. I know that we'd kind of make up our own games and then we'd have disagreements on what the rules should be and who should be it when we're playing tag and how the rules would change even throughout our game and just crazy stuff like that. So I think that it really challenged us to be creative and to work together to kind of problem solve. And I think that those were really valuable skills that I was just able to build upon as I continued to get older. And just like any other kids, like there would be times where we would get injured on the trampoline or when we were running down a gravel road and kind of fall and skin our knees. And I think that that can be really hard as parents, I'm sure, because nobody wants to see their kid getting hurt. But I think that it's really important to remember that sighted kids also get hurt as much as blind kids do. And so I think that that was good for my parents to see that it wasn't just my sister and me getting hurt, but sometimes they had to bandage up our neighbor kids and some other friends that we had over. So I think that that was really important. And I also think just the idea of exploration, kind of like Casey was mentioning before, I think that that is really important for kids, sighted or blind, because we learn about our environment through our experiences. And my education for undergrad is actually in therapeutic recreation. So this is an area that I really enjoy. And the idea of structured and unstructured play. So I think a lot of times, with blind kids specifically, a lot of their movements may be dictated by the sighted people around them. So, like, come over here, or like, don't touch that, or you're getting too close, or things like that. And so, I think that it's really important for blind kids to know that they have control over their body and to have that autonomy. So, that unstructured play where kids are exploring their environment and trying and learning new things without someone dictating where they go or what they play with. I think that that time is really, really important for kids. But then also to have that structured play where there are rules and there are expectations. So that would be more if a kid was playing like on a sports team or something like that. That leads me into my experience with sports growing up. So when I was, I think 3 or 4, I began dance classes. So I did ballet and tap first, and then I started doing jazz when I got a little bit older. So I was a dancer from age 3 till about age like 8 or 9, and I really enjoyed that. Um, it was something that my parents felt comfortable with me being in because at the time they were really nervous. Our eye condition is pretty rare and they don't know a lot about it. So my parents were kind of nervous about whether like contact sports would be an option or really sports in general. So they started us off in dance, and I really enjoyed it, but it just didn't really always do it for me. I needed something a little um, different. I played basketball in elementary school for about a year and got hit in the face a couple too many times, and I was like, this is not for me. And I think that as I got older, I realized that it just got a little more fast paced, and it was like it doesn't have to be a visual sport, but it was pretty visual having to follow the ball, and I think above all else, I just didn't really enjoy it, and it wasn't really my cup of tea. So, um, when I was in 5th grade is when I really found my passion. So I was dancing at a dance studio, in my hometown, and it had just recently opened. I moved over from, uh a different dance studio that I was dancing at previously. And so this new studio was starting a cheerleading team. And my sister was super excited about this and was ready to go out for the cheerleading team. And I signed up for a tumbling class. My sister wanted me to do cheerleading with her, but I was like, there's no way I'll be a cheerleader. I'm not into that girly stuff. I'm not very peppy. Like, that's not my thing. So I did my tumbling class. My sister Lauren did her cheerleading team. And the year after, so I did tumbling for a year, and then my sister just loved cheer. So I decided to give it a shot the next year. And so I signed up for a recreation cheer team. And so this was really good. It was really focused on like more of the athleticism rather than the sideline cheerleading that I guess I had in my head. And so it was great. I got to be a flyer and I was so excited about that, to be thrown in the air, and it's a little scary for sure, but I was really excited about it at first and could still practice my tumbling that I had been doing, and continue to progress in that. And then the next year I decided to go out for the competitive, team that they were starting. So that is where I ended up really being for the rest of my high school career. So I was an all-star cheerleader for 12 years and was able to be on a level 2 through 5 team. As I got older, I kind of moved up in both like the difficulty level and then also like the age bracket. So this was just like a really incredible sport that I had found because it really challenged me. It was very demanding, physically and mentally, and I found that also it was like really um, it just really taught me a lot of great life skills. So I think that it's important to show or to like discuss what physical activity can offer to you, like to your health, but also to kind of like what I was mentioning before with like social skills or with confidence or with problem solving. And I think that I learned a lot about myself as a cheerleader, and especially like mental strength. So I know with tumbling, for example, just like getting yourself to like build the confidence to get that next skill and really getting through those like mental barriers. I kind of compare it to cane travel now because it's like it's really not about like the cane technique. It's really not about whether you can get from point A to point B, but it's really about the mental strength and just your positive outlook, and just kind of how you like your thought processes are really important. So through All-Star Cheerleading, though, I had a lot of opportunities. So my team traveled all over Iowa and all over the Midwest. We also were able to go to nationals in Dallas and Orlando and Myrtle Beach. So it was just a really, really good experience for me to be out of my comfort zone. Um, I will say with that, I was not a cane user until I went through the Louisiana Center for the Blind, and I think that that was probably the biggest barrier that I saw as a cheerleader. We would go to competitions all over the country, and if anyone's ever been to a cheer or dance competition, I know Kristen's daughter's a dancer, but there's a lot of strobe lights and a lot of um, loud music, a lot of stuff going on. And so that was always like really anxiety producing for me because trying to stick with your team and trying to run up these millions of stairs to get to your next like warm up room meeting or whatever. But I think that that was probably my biggest regret as an athlete was that I wasn't completely comfortable with my blindness at the time and hadn't accepted myself as a blind person. And so I think that that was a barrier not only for myself, but also like as a team. I know that my teammates knew about my blindness, but I thought that if I didn't make it a big deal, then they wouldn't make it a big deal, which I don't think is a terrible thing, but I think also I wasn't really receiving the help that I maybe needed. And I did experience a lot of anxiety because of just like unfamiliar environments. And I just really had to spend a lot of mental energy on like being overly observant of my environment, like watching my feet, things like that. But I did find that cheerleading in general was um, pretty accessible for me, I guess I will say. A lot of it was um, I was able to get the information I needed by feel. So, for example, I was a back base, so that's the person in the back of the stunt that usually holds on to the flyer's ankle. And so, what I was able to understand was if the flyer would move, I would be able to feel her movements based on what her ankle felt like. And everything is to like an 8 count in cheerleading. So it was very much about timing. And so that was predictable. But then if my flyer for some reason like would drop her hip or would lose her balance or something like that, I would be able to feel that that was happening, and I felt like I was able to react at the same rate that the other bases were. Of course, there were situations every once in a while where none of us were prepared and we all had to just react um, to the best of our ability. But yeah, I think that that was important. And then the communication with my teammates. So making sure that I understood who was going to be next to me um, in like our formations or our stunt group so that I kind of had a good understanding of where my placement was going to be on the mat. And my coaches were really good and my teammates were really good. Like if I was um, out of place for whatever reason, especially when we first learned the routine, sometimes it was a little more challenging for me to pick up exactly where I needed to be since I wasn't able to understand that information as visually as my teammates. So they would just like subtly tell me or just point it out in a way that wasn't super embarrassing for me, I guess. So um, yeah, that was a really positive thing. I was also able to begin coaching when I was 14. So I was able to coach girls and boys that were 18 months and over. So that was really fun for me. I found that um, a lot of times with those classes, with the tumbling classes, you're spotting them, which means you're kind of helping them manipulate their body to perform the skill. And so I found that that was something that came pretty naturally to me because I had my hands on the child and was able to feel exactly what their emotions were. Um, I also think that how things sounded to me, you could also get a lot of information, kind of the same with cane travel. Like you have an understanding of what a skill is supposed to sound like. And so when it is performed, you can kind of assess appropriately based on what it sounds like. So, just like anything else, you develop those alternative techniques because it's something I was passionate about. And so it's something that I just really tried to um, work towards and just protect or perfect my skills in those areas. And then I graduated from high school and went to college, and I was on my cheer team in college for 2 years, and then I ended up having to have shoulder surgery, so I was unfortunately done after that. But yeah, I think that exercise, as I said, has always been a really important thing in my life. I think that transitioning from being on a team to just trying to live a healthy lifestyle was kind of challenging for me, I guess, because I was used to my coaches giving me a plan, like, this is what we're doing for lifting and this is what we're doing for practice. So I knew what the skills were, I knew what the exercises were, but it was helpful to have that plan from my coach, and it was kind of less work for me. So I think now in the last few years, it's just been trying to hold myself accountable to perform, um, like still perform these exercises and still make it to the gym, still try to walk outside as much as I can. So it's just a little bit more accountability, but it is still something that is really important to me. So I do make a point to find the time to get my workouts in. So, um, yeah, does anyone have any questions?
So, Katie, I have a question. So, you mentioned that sometimes you were pushed outside your comfort zone. Was it uncomfortable when you were pushed outside your comfort zone, but it later became, um, when did you see the benefit of being pushed out of your comfort zone? Because I know sometimes in the moment it can be very frustrating, but I mean, how did you feel that it was beneficial afterwards?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that um, what I think about most when you ask that is relating to tumbling. So I think that sometimes my coaches believed in me more than I believed in myself because I think that sometimes we're harder on ourselves than others are. And so my coaches would challenge me and say, like, all right, this time I want you to try, like, round off two back handsprings to a back tuck. And I'd be like, I've never done that before. Like, this isn't going to be good. And, those circular thoughts go around in your head, and it's like, I can't do it. And then I think being pushed out of my comfort zone in that situation is important because then a lot of times your coaches know what you're capable of, and others typically won't challenge you to do things that they don't think you're ready for. So I think that having that push from them and then being able to perform the skill and proving that to me or to myself was really helpful in my growth. And then I also think like that becomes more of an internal thing because if we're only pushed externally and we're not pushing ourselves, then I think that that also makes it difficult for us to grow. So I think that from a young age, like my parents pushed me and my coaches pushed me, my teachers pushed me. And then I think that you realize that you are capable of these things. So then you start to push and challenge yourself, which I think is a really important element of growth.
Yes, thank you. And I know as a teacher of blind students, sometimes I think people we don't push blind students enough because we think whatever they're doing is enough and that's all they need to be doing. We're thankful for whatever they do. So it's wonderful to hear you, Katie, say that your coaches believed in you and they pushed you a little bit further. And even though it was outside of your comfort zone, then it made you even push yourself internally. So that's wonderful to hear, Katie. And it sounds like you had such an awesome cheerleading career. If that shoulder had not gotten you, I think you would still be cheerleading.
Maybe. I'm hoping to get back into coaching here and like wherever I end up for a job, I'm hoping to get plugged in with either a gym or a high school team that I can help coach. So,
That would be wonderful. Thank you. And if you hang around, we might have questions that come up later on in the webinar. So thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for sharing your experience with us.
Yeah, and Casey, I actually have to hop off here in a few minutes because I'm heading to church, but if I can provide my contact information, and if anyone has questions, then I can answer them that way. Is that okay?
That is perfectly okay. Is it okay if we share it in the chat so that the parents have it?
Yes, that sounds good. Phone number, email, whatever is best is good. And do you want me to share it, or are you able to do
Sure.
that?
If you'll just say it aloud, then I'll type it in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, so my phone number is 515-783-4522.
Okay.
And then my email is KATYOLSEN24@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. And I know our parents so appreciate you. And I hope you have a good rest of the evening. Next, we have Melissa Riccobono. And Melissa is a huge sports fan. And she knows more statistics and things about sports than I could even imagine. So I want Melissa to talk to us about her experience with sports.
Great. Are we going to do a door prize first? Because I did see that on the agenda
Oh,
there was a break for door prize, and I don't want to deprive our people of their door prizes.
thank you, Melissa. So sorry. Donna, do you have a door prize for us?
Yes, let me spin it here. And Casey Robertson.
Oh, I think you
Do you want- I think you should.
I think you absolutely deserve a door prize. There's no question
Yes.
that you deserve that
Okay.
$25. So please take it and spend it well. Maybe on yourself, because I know you, and you'll spend it on your family. So try to spend it on yourself.
Okay, okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I am Melissa Riccobono. I am so happy to be here, and I am going to talk about sports. It's really interesting to me, the parallels that Katie and I had growing up. We both had dads, it sounds like, who were very into sports. And actually, my mom was also into sports and still is. My dad actually was really impressed when they started dating because my mom knew Green Bay Packers players by their number and also by their position. And my dad was very impressed by this. And I don't know, they were married for quite a number of years. So I guess it helped them relationship. I also had two older brothers and they were extremely into sports. They played basketball, baseball, some football, soccer, tennis, pretty much anything that they could play. They enjoyed playing, and they were quite a bit older than me. I was sort of the I don't want to say afterthought, but the little surprise package that came toward the end of the family. So my closest sibling in age is 5 years older than I am. My oldest sibling is 9 years older, and so by the time I was really growing up, they were really into kind of their careers as athletes, if you can call them careers. My sister's also blind, but she was a much more cautious kid. My parents made sure that she explored, but she found her love of reading and learning at a very young age, and she was much happier with a book, was much happier running around and trying to climb things and see what I could get into. Although she climbed as well, we both climbed trees and different things like that. I think sports is so important because it really helps kids learn about their own bodies and space, what their bodies can do. it's just really important to have that understanding from a very young age. And you can't get that understanding in any other way except for to move, to climb and then fall down and realize, oh, I didn't put my hand in the right place, or I did this wrong and that's why I fell. You can't teach that really in any other way than allowing your children to do this. I was a runner in high school. I ran cross country and I ran track. I had really great guide runners, adult guide runners who ran with me, and it worked out really well. And I also echo Katie that a lot of those life skills, a lot of those friendships, a lot of those skills and things from being on a team were really important to me kind of throughout my life. I still like the idea of running, but my knees don't like it much anymore. So now I'm much more into biking. I have a stand underneath my desk that I can pedal on when I'm doing email or just sitting at my desk writing. And that just helps me keep my legs moving. And I really enjoy that. And I'm really hoping that once this pandemic gets more under control, maybe I can find a couple of people and find a tandem bicycle and be able to, be on the bicycle with somebody, because I would really love to ride outside. So that's a little bit about my sports journey, but I'm here more to talk about what you as parents can do to really help your kids gain an understanding of sports as a whole. And very much like Katie, your kids don't need to know every single thing about every single sport. But I just think because sports are so big in our culture, that a kid that has some knowledge in sports to be able to relate to peers and to things they read in books or things they have that happen in movies or on TV, if they have just a little bit more knowledge about what the sports are. So not only do I think movement is super important, and I mean, my dad, Katie was talking about hitting golf balls in the front yard. I remember my dad playing catch with me. We had a softball. I'm totally blind, but he would stand a certain distance away from me. He would throw, I would catch. Sometimes when I was really little, I think he bounced it once and then I could hear it and then I could find it. But eventually it was just that we would just toss the ball back and forth. And it was really kind of muscle memory. I knew how hard to throw it to get it to him. He knew how to throw it back to me, and I had my arms out and I could catch it. And that's still some of my favorite memories of me and my dad, just sitting together, playing ball, catching the ball. But as I got older, of course, my brothers played ball. So that's really nice because we had balls all over our house of all kinds. So I learned this is what a basketball feels like. This is what a baseball feels like. This is what a football feels like. These are what plastic hockey sticks feel like. This is what a tennis ball is. This is what a tennis racket is. This is what a badminton birdie is. This is what a badminton racket feels like. This is what a baseball bat feels like. Just because there was all that equipment, here's what a football helmet feels like. Kind of all of those things that I was able to feel and just know about because I was able to have all those tactile experiences. My dad played volleyball, and I very much remember all of a sudden I was maybe 4 or 5 and saying, well, I know about baseball and I know about basketball and I know about football. What is volleyball? And he used this long stuffed caterpillar that we had and we put it on the floor, but he said, okay, pretend that's like a net, kind of like a tennis net. And, you have to get the ball over that net and the ball is, then he could also give me the ball's kind of like a basketball, but it's lighter and it's a little bit smaller. It doesn't have the, the rough, I don't know what he said, the rough stuff that a basketball has. But because I had all that other knowledge, even though we didn't have a volleyball right there, and eventually he did get a volleyball so that I could feel it and I knew what it was. But he could talk to me about kind of all of those things, and he could talk to me about how people hit, what it was like when somebody bumped the ball or served the ball or hit the ball with their arms. Again, was I good at it? No, but at least I had that understanding. And I knew when he went to play volleyball every week, that's what he was going to do. Bowling, he also bowled. I loved nothing more. And I don't know, my parents were really permissive. I mean, I used to roll his bowling ball around the house. I don't know why I liked it so much. It was super heavy, especially to me as a really little kid, but I loved that shiny feeling. I loved rolling it around. My brothers played bowling on Saturdays. I went to the bowling alley with my dad a lot. I heard those pins fall down. We had also a little toy, I don't know if it was Fisher Price or what it was, but it was a plastic bowling set. So I knew what the pins felt like. We played bowling on our hardwood floor. My sister eventually taught me how to set the pins up the correct way. So I knew, that there were 4 in back and then 3 and then 2 and then 1 in a triangle. And we would play bowling, and I would use my Braille writer and keep my bowling score when I was in like 1st or 2nd grade. And there was a show on TV called Bowling with the Champs. And I would always say that I was playing bowling with the chumps. I don't know why, but I thought that was very funny. So just all of those things that really helped me. And I guess what I want to say to all of you guys is some of you are saying, I'm not into sports at all. I don't care about any sport, or I love basketball. I can't stand baseball, or I can't stand football, or I don't know anything about soccer. And that's okay. That's really why other people in your kid's life might be able to fill in those gaps. Do you have friends that really like a specific sport and might want to explain that sport to your child, let your child feel the different equipment? That would be really powerful. And again, maybe your child's not going to play the sport, but letting them explore and ask questions and touch and get a feel for it. Also in gym classes, sometimes there's adaptive physical education. Some of the programs are really good. Other programs aren't so good. Make sure when your child's in physical education, it's important that they're actually getting something out of it and actually exercising. But it's also important that they're, as much as possible, being taught at least some of the skills that their sighted peers are being taught with balls, with throwing, with catching. They should know what it's like to throw, if they can, to throw an overhand throw versus an underhand throw. They should know that when a pitcher is pitching in baseball, they throw overhand unless they're a girl and they're in softball and they throw underhand. Things like that. Again, just incidental knowledge that I just think is really nice for somebody to have and can really help spark conversations, particularly if your child becomes a sports fan. So if you haven't guessed, I'm definitely a sports fan today. I love baseball especially, and I love football. I love my Milwaukee Brewers. Now I'm in Baltimore, so I do follow the Baltimore Orioles. It's all okay because they're the American League and the Brewers are the National League. So the Brewers are where my heart is, and I'm still waiting for a Brewers-Orioles World Series. I don't know that would ever happen, but I couldn't lose if that happened. That would be great. Same thing with football. Love, love, love my Green Bay Packers. Follow the Baltimore Ravens because I'm here, and the same thing. Wow, maybe someday there'll be a Packers-Ravens Super Bowl. But I also remember not just learning what the balls were like, but then as I got older, my mom and dad taking me to the baseball field, having me actually run around the bases with them, letting me actually feel this is what a base feels like. Again, this was not a baseball field, a professional one. This is a baseball field at a park in our town. But we went when there was no one there, and we walked around the diamond shape. We, here's where home plate is, here's where first base is, here's where second base is. And then, let's run. I was very little, but I clearly remember run. Now you got to run. You hit the ball, run. And that was important because now when I watch baseball or listen to a game, when someone says they're on first base, I have that picture in my head. And even though it's not the The baseball field, the professional one that I'm picturing the field at Washington Park. I still have a sense of what that's like. Same thing with football. There was a football field at our local high school. Mom would take me and say, okay, this is the 50-yard line. This is the 40-yard line. This is the 30-yard line. We could walk that whole length of that field. So I could really get a sense of, wow, this is actually really big. And this is, these distances between the yard lines, they're pretty far, especially when you're a little person and you have very short legs. But all of those things, the gym and basketball, my brothers would play. And again, kind of like what Katie was saying, when you're in a sports arena, or you're watching something, those sounds can kind of be overwhelming. And basketball is really bang, 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 squeak, 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 squeak of the shoes, buzz, when there's a foul or whatever. But after the game was over, we could go onto the floor and my dad would let me dribble a basketball around. And one time when I was in middle school, a custodian let me climb up a ladder so I could actually feel how high the hoop was and what the actual hoop felt like in the backboard. I mean, I understood all these things because we had miniature ones, but it was really cool to be able to actually get up there and feel the real thing. So as many experiences as you can give your kids. The other thing that I could say is, if you love a sport and you go to a game, if it's a professional sport, let your child take a radio along so they can listen to the play-by-play. That's still, to this day, how I prefer watching any kind of sports game. I love being at the stadium. I love hearing the crack of the bat or the roar of the crowd. I love the food. I love all of that kind of thing. But I also love knowing what's going on, and that radio allows me to do that. Because I was such a fan, because my parents and everybody else in my family were such fans, I learned a lot about the rules and the different positions and things like that. Again, your child might not care so much about that, and, kind of let them lead. But if they start asking you questions, when you can, answer them or find someone that can. Your child, they should kind of know what's a shortstop, what's a pitcher, what's a catcher, what's a forward in basketball, what's a guard, what's a and there are books too, and some of my basketball knowledge came from a couple books that I really enjoyed as I was growing up, about a girl who wanted to play basketball and the school wanted her to play on the boys team, a girls team, and the girls team was terrible and she had a ton of really good skills, so she fought and won the right to play on the boys team. And that just taught me even more basketball than I wouldn't have learned before. I guess the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to any questions, let your child try, just like Katie was saying, and give them those experiences and just encourage that. And just know that sometimes, for me, I was the youngest of 4 kids. So my parents had kind of seen it all to a certain extent when I came along. So there were things that I did, like climbing up on things and jumping off, that maybe they wouldn't have let my older siblings do, but they just sort of let me do because they figured I was going to be okay. When I learned roller skating because my brother's roller skates were in the hallway and I had just learned to tie shoes. And so I thought, I'm going to put these on and I'm going to tie them up because I can, and I'm going to see what this is like. And my parents just let me do that. And, I understand that some families just don't have that equipment around or things like that, but let your children explore, give them those opportunities. If they hear somebody that has a skateboard in the park, and ask what that noise is, talk to them about it. See if you can borrow that skateboard for a second so your child can feel it. See if, they're interested in having some skates or some rollerblades, or a pogo stick, or, whatever it is. There's lots of ways that blind kids can be active and also be safe, and just give your kids those opportunities as much as you can. And I'm more than happy to take questions And I will stay around. I will stay around too in case we don't have time. I don't know how long I have babbled on. So thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, Melissa. Do we have any questions for Melissa?
Very quiet group.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Donna. I was thinking about making like a little reference sheet for my child's coaches, like a quick kind of, here's who I am, like a common question and answer kind of thing. Do you think that's a good idea to do like right away if I do it, or is it better to is that something that's good to talk about in advance, or
I think definitely. And I would make the reference sheet, but if you can, actually emailing or talking directly to the coach would be really good. My daughter, I do have 2 blind daughters, which I forgot to say, and my one daughter has played soccer, and so when we signed her up, I think I said something on the sign up form because I asked about accommodations. And then the coach reached out to me, and then I could tell him, look, she will really need to play with this ball. We have a ball that's audible. It rattles. It's wonderful, by the way. The soccer ball that the National Federation of the Blind Independence Market sells is one of the best balls I've ever seen as far as noise making. I don't know what's inside of it, but it rattles better than anything I've ever experienced. And it's actually, for the first time as a blind mom, I was able to kick the ball as it came toward me. It's a great ball. So I don't know what your son plays, but if it's soccer, that's a really good ball, or just having that one in the backyard to kick around is really good. But yes, I did reach out to him and say, and then he kind of came up with the idea of, well, maybe sometimes she could be goalie, because number one, you can have your hands on the ball when you're goalie. And number two, she won't have to worry about running up and down the field and trying to figure out who's her teammate versus the other team. Sometimes colors are just depending on what they are. And I thought, well, that's really, but she can hear the ball coming toward the goal, and she can keep the ball out of the goal. And I thought, well, that's pretty smart. I had never even really thought about that. And he didn't make her be goalie all the time, which I also really appreciated, because you don't want to pigeonhole kids either. But I thought that was a really cool way that he was like, oh, well, this is going to work perfect. She'll just be our goalie sometimes. And I thought, well, geez, I never would have thought of that. So yeah, I think definitely questions and answers, but I also think just that actual talking. It's great to have a sheet so the coach has a reference point, but I think it's much more important for you to sort of talk to the coach also. And then also maybe to have a little meeting with the team. I think when my daughter played, it wasn't a very big deal, but I think the coach did say, Oriana doesn't see as well as you guys. That's why she uses her cane. When she comes to the field, she doesn't have to use it on the field, but we are going to use this ball that rattles. And, if you are kicking to her, if you can say her name, that would be really helpful, just little things like that. And they were like 5 and 6, and it was fine. Like none of the kids said anything. So it was, but it doesn't have to be a big deal, but I do think that a little bit of education can go a long way.
That makes sense. Thank you. Penny Duffy, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay, I'm trying to think. Am I unmuted? I have a question for you, Melissa. What really struck me as you were talking was how your the activities and the sports you did with your family, how it really tied you as a family together, and it was a special experience for you as a family. And if for some reason your parents, I think it's a really good point that I was really, that's something I really enjoyed hearing about. But is there a special memory, either a sport you did with your family, or like watching one of your brother's games that really was really special?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. There's so There's so many. I guess the one that really sticks out is, Katie was talking about cheerleading. And when I was 4 or 5, my brother played basketball for our church. And my dad was one of the coaches. And so my mom worked at a store at that time. So often when my brother was playing, my mom needed to work. So I was the littlest kid in the family. And so a lot of times I was just taken along. And I have really good memories of being on the team bus. It was like having like 9 or 10 big brothers. I mean, I got to sit on, the laps of the big boys, and they were always just really nice to me and, like give me 5 and, stuff like that. And then I actually got a couple of my own pom-poms, and I got to pretend to be a cheerleader. They actually had girls that were, the bigger girls that were on the cheerleading team. And I never learned like the real moves, but I did learn the words to the cheers, and I would, jump up and down and wave my pom-poms and yell the words of the cheers. And I mean, number one, that was a brilliant move because it kept me from saying I was bored every 2 minutes. So I'm sure that's probably why it happened. But it was very, very, very special in a lot of ways to just be, not just to be dragged along to the games, but really feel like I belonged. And, I'm sure I still said I was bored, and I'm sure I was whiny sometimes, but that just really sticks out to me. The other thing that really sticks out is, my brothers, again, were so much older than I was. And so by the time my brother graduated from high school, I was in 7th grade going into 8th grade. And my dad, again, he loved sports. He passed away almost 11 years ago now, but he loved sports so much. And he'd been so involved with coaching them in the summers and baseball particularly, and then, watching them play in high school. And I think he was kind of sad. Like, I think he felt truly like that was it, and then all of a sudden, my 8th grade year, I said, you know what, I'd really like to try to go out for track. And, my mom and they both really encouraged me, but I think that just really, because I ran track and I loved it. And then the cross country coach saw me running and said, we'd love to have you on the cross country team. And it was like my dad, he'd been a runner a little bit in his life in high school, but he'd never really coached it or, watched it much, but like it was a whole new sport for him to sort of explore. And he got into that. And that really created quite a bond. I earned my letter as a freshman in both track and cross country. And I mean, my dad called me like his jockette or his studette. Like it really bonded us in a way that that was just very, very, very special. And again, had I not played sports, we sort of still would have bonded, but it really was special. And I think partly because he just thought his days of watching a child of his play sports were over. And then all of a sudden I came along and kind of shocked everybody by saying like, hey, I'd like to try this. And then actually becoming a fairly good runner, which kind of surprised everybody, including me. So there you go.
Thanks, Melissa. That is wonderful. I have a niece that's totally blind, and we decided she wanted to do this warrior run. And those of you that are not familiar with the warrior run, is like you run so far and then you climb through a muddy pit, and then you run so far and you go over a hill, and then you run so far and you cross a lake, and it's all of this this extravagant stuff. So she was not typically a runner, and I had not ran since high school. So, but nobody would do it with her. So I decided we would do this warrior run. And I think that was the beginning and the end of my warrior runs, because it was wonderful. The bonding was wonderful. The experience was wonderful. The participation was wonderful. The next day was not so wonderful. So the bonding.
It's funny. My son wants to do cross country because his friends want to do it, and I keep telling him, okay, buddy, I would love that would be amazing for me to be able to watch you as a parent. You have got to start running now, otherwise you are going to die your first week of practice.
Yes.
This is not going to be good, and you're still going to be sore. No matter what, you're going to be sore. But you really need to start running now.
Yeah, most definitely. So that's wonderful. So if you have any questions, we'll have another chance at the end for questions.
Oh, and I will also put my information in the chat, because I'm always more than happy. I love talking sports, and I will talk sports all day long. So I'm happy to do that. I'll put my stuff in the chat real quick.
Okay, thank you, Melissa, for doing that for us. So Donna, we have time for a door prize.
Okay, here we go. And Mary Walsh, congratulations.
Yay, Mary. Okay, so Mary, if you will just put your information in the chat to, you can do a direct response to the National Parents of Blind Children response in the chat box. We'll get you a $25 gift certificate. And I happen to know Mary, and she has lots of wonderful students that she could use that $25 on. You can use it on yourself too, Mary. You don't have to use it on your students. So the next person we have is a wonderful student that has had lots of exciting things happening for her lately. She just received a big award just this week. And I would like to welcome Abby Duffy to our panel tonight to discuss her sports that she has taken part in. So Abby, are you with us? I think I just asked to unmute you. There you go.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hi.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So hi, my name is Abby. I'm a junior in high school right now, so I'm an 11th grader. I do a lot of academics, so I'm in 3 dual enrollment college courses right now as well, like through my high school, but I also in a lot of high school classes, like chemistry and stuff. But on the side of that, and through school, I do a lot of athletics, as was mentioned before. So just some things that I've done that I've found a lot of success in is through high school. I did crew, which is rowing. If you don't know what it is, it's similar to kayaking, but you do it on usually 4 to 8 person boats. And everyone is facing backwards in crew. So it's a sport that it didn't really need any modifications for me as a blind person to do it, because except for maybe getting to the water, once everyone's in their seats, we're getting directed to go where anyways. So that gave me a lot of success. It was a very athletic sport, as you would expect from a crew team, but I am a very athletic person, and I think that was a really good experience for me, because it gave me all those like team aspects of sports, and it made me feel really included in the team as a blind person, but they didn't have to like change anything for me, which was really nice. I also did track and field, as sounds like Melissa Gavono did, but I was not a runner, and I will never be a runner. I'm just going to say that right now. I threw things, and I may do it next year, but I do alpine ski racing. So the seasons kind of interfere with each other, but I did it freshman and sophomore year of high school. So I did shot put and discus, and then I also did javelin, which I personally was not that good at. The thing I liked about throwing is once throwing is described, it is basically you hold a thing and you throw it in some manner. That is something I did not necessarily need a running guide for, because I was not running, or I did not need any special modifications for, because I was not doing anything except for like standing and throwing. I and I had fun with that as well, with the team aspect of sports, and how once you learn how to do it, a lot of high school teams will like help you learn, and like maybe you can like feel somebody else's arm, what motions they do, and then you can do it just fine as a blind person. I find a lot of success in high school sports because the the coaches that are there and the students that are there because they like what they're doing. Like nobody would do a high school sport or basically any sport if they weren't liking it. So they're usually very willing to help people like learn what they're doing. When I did do some minimal running, even though I do not like it, because I was on the track team, even if I was a thrower, what I would commonly do is I did not hire a person who was my running guide, for instance, but I just kind of like stuck near kind of like the people I talked to and just ran around them, and they all knew I couldn't see. So like if I was about to run into a fence or something, they would warn me. But other than that, I found a lot of success in high school level sports and even like outside of high school level sports because a lot of things don't need as many modifications as you'd expect them to. The kind of the third high school sport I did, which is the one I do the most and I care about the most in a way, is alpine ski racing. I do it outside of high school, I do it within high school, and I also do it nationally. So I do through my high school ski team my freshman year, I had to do a meeting with the coaches because they just wanted to say, hey, this is not a learn to ski team, because they didn't think as a blind person that I could handle like the level of competing that the ski team had. But I just kind of like, had to explain to them how I ski as a blind person and what I do. And then they kind of let me on the team, and I at least I think I'm a really good competitor there, and I help them earn points as a team and everything. I really enjoy it. Skiing is a sport that is one of the easier ones I think to modify. It's a lot easier to modify than some other ones, even though blind people can do anything except maybe become like Uber drivers. That wouldn't be a very successful career path. But with ski racing and skiing in general, basically what happens most commonly is there are guides in front of the blind athlete or just the blind person if you're doing it recreationally. So my guide is my dad. So he skis in front of me and I ski behind him. And I do have some residual vision. So he wears bright colors and I can see him. We also have headsets. So I can hear what he is saying and where he's directing me to go. So even if we're going 50 miles an hour, there's a very low chance of me getting hurt because he'll instruct me to like, hey, stop. There's like some obstacle or like turn, things like that. When I'm in gates, which is what it's called, the things that you ski around when you ski race, we have different terms that we've created over time as a blind athlete to go through the gates and to go around and to make it down the mountain without going really slow or face planting or anything. That is not to say I have never face planted. I have done it plenty of times, but I've had a lot of success in alpine ski racing on many levels. I've done it through my high school, which after I started doing it, I think everyone kind of understood, yeah, Abby is blind, but even though she skis with another person around her, that's the only difference. She's still a high school athlete. She's the same as all of us, except that she can't see. Um, I've done it through the high school level, but more like on the team aspect that's not through my high school. So I've done it at like local mountains where like the more advanced high schoolers train. And through them, a lot of things people are really welcoming as long as you have the skills. So once people understood that I'm blind, but I can kind of hold my weight, everywhere seems really welcoming. And I've also ski raced on a national level at a couple mountains like in Utah and Colorado. And I recently went out for nationals a couple weeks ago and I got 2 silvers and 2 bronze medals. And I was competing against some Paralympians. So I had a really good experience out there ski racing. I think it's also really important when you're like blind, you might not go out and find a sport that I love as much as alpine ski racing, but it's important, at least I think it is, to do some sort of activity. I like other things that I've done that I may not be as competitive in as ski racing, but I still enjoy are like hiking because it's still getting outside and doing active things, but you can often do it with your family and have a good time. There's also kayaking, which you can either do it in like the same boat So if the blind person maybe is in the same boat as a sighted person, they wouldn't need necessarily directions, or you could do it in two separate boats as long as somebody is there to kind of direct the blind person, like to direct, like if I'm on a separate boat, I might need someone to tell me like, hey, Abby, go a little bit more to the right so you don't crash into this other thing. But other than that, things like that work out really well for me. Or like tandem biking. I've had a lot of fun doing things like that because it's a fun summer activity that I can do with my dad that's not skiing, but we can do it together. And it's a lot safer, especially on like streets, for at least for me on my comfort level, to be on the same bike as somebody else than to be on my own bicycle. That's just kind of where my comfort level is. Some other blind people may have more vision than I do and may feel totally comfortable even on the streets to be on separate bikes as long as someone to direct them. But I like tandeming, such an easy way to adapt bike riding where you can still kind of get around without needing a lot of other um, I don't know, like instructions. I could say a little bit more about skiing, I guess. So there's a lot of adaptives for different sports that are more harder to do than like going to a high school. So like with skiing is the thing I know the most about. Most alpine ski mountains have some sort of adaptive. So on their website, or you can look up like, let's just say you want to go to a mountain. Cannon's a good example in my end of the woods. You could look up Canada Adaptive and you'd find out, oh, Adaptive Sports Partners in the North Country is there. And you could set up a lesson and do it, set up skiing that way. Ski racing does not have to be at the level of I'm at. Skiing can just be recreational. It can be for fun. Obviously, it's meant to be a fun activity. But to do things like skiing or even like high school sports, as long as people know the blind person can do things and that you are prepared as a blind person to maybe put in some effort and not just kind of sit there, I think you can be successful in anything. I've kind of rambled on about a bunch of different things, and and is there anything else that I should talk about? I don't know. I can answer questions.
Yeah, so you're doing good, Abby. So I'm amazed because I never knew that most of the mountains already had adaptive techniques and things. I there's been so many times that I've tried to carry students, or I've tried to carry my niece to different activities that were, public activities. For okay, so zip lining. We tried to go to this place for zip lining, and we were denied because they said they had no plan for a blind person to zip line. And my being part of the NFB, I educated them a little bit on things, but I'm amazed that these mountains already have adaptive things. So what kind of, like, if I was just going to take my students to a mountain for a lesson, like what would we have to do? What kind of adaptive things do they already have?
So it depends on the adaptive and on the location of like the mountain or whatever, but there are adaptives all over the place. And they can have things like, I know a lot about skiing, and often it will be on a mountain and somebody will volunteer or somebody will work for the adaptive, and you sign up through the adaptive to go skiing. And then a person like a volunteer or somebody else who knows what they're doing and works for the adaptive with the blind person is what I know about, would wear a bib that says guide, or would wear a jacket for for the adaptive, and would go out similar to like if you sign up for ski school or sign up to take a lesson of something else, but they would do adaptive methods to teach how to ski. So they would be the guide. So if you go to an adaptive and want to sign up for recreational skiing, they would likely guide the blind person or instruct them down the mountain, also teach them how to ski, instead of just if you went to ski school, they'd only teach you how to ski. There are adaptives for a lot of different things. So if you Google, it's usually called adaptive, but other people call it different things. There have been some, I think I've done adaptive lessons on rock climbing also in the past, but a lot of the more adventure-based sports have some sort of adaptive that you can go to and take a lesson through. I've heard ones about kayaking exist before, and there are even some about like biking. If you've never done it before, a lot of adaptives have more simple things, or like extreme hiking. So adaptives just tend to be a place where you can go and do a lesson in something, but they teach you more adaptive methods and help you as a blind person instead of just like signing up for a lesson with a person who doesn't know what they're doing, kind of with a blind person.
So that's wonderful. So here in Mississippi, there's not much chance that I'll go snow skiing, but you did mention something that I love, and I just recently gotten into kayaking, and I'm hoping to take a student kayaking soon. So do we have, oh, Melissa Riccobono has a question. I think I unmuted. I think I asked, there you go.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay, great. So Abby, that's a great description of adaptive. I would also say that if students have other impairments besides blindness, a lot of times places that have adaptive lessons and things like that, they might even have something called a sit ski, where somebody who maybe doesn't have as good use of their legs can actually sit and ski and use their arms to propel themselves. I mean, there's all sorts of different adaptive things. The other thing that you mentioned, Abby, about rock climbing, I remember, first of all, I've rock climbed in Colorado and love rock climbing. I would love to get back. That's one other thing I'd love to do again. But the other really cool thing about rock climbing is I was helping to plan a rock climbing event for blind kids, and we couldn't really take them out into the wilderness, but there was a rock climbing gym indoors, and I called them and I said, kind of thinking like, okay, they're gonna freak out. So, I first of all said, well, we have a group of kids, and how much is the price, this and that. And then I said, well, by the way, they're blind kids, and so I just want you to know they can do this. And they said, oh, we're not at all bothered by that, because a lot of times we actually ask people if they would like to be blindfolded while they are climbing rocks, because number one, some people are very afraid of heights, but number two, it really is a tactile sport. You're talking about reaching for handholds and finding your footholds. And they said that, a lot of times people really find it easier or find it a very different experience doing it without using their eyes. And they said, so we're not upset about blind people at all. We have sighted people who are blind all the time. And I thought, wow, what a cool attitude. And how often do you hear that? Not often. So I definitely think rock climbing is fantastic. And there are so many really cool indoor rock climbing gyms now, even for really little kids. And that is a super fun, super exciting sport to do, that you can do either indoor or outdoor. And definitely, I think every child should be introduced to rock climbing, but definitely also every blind child. But that's just my, because I love it so much.
That's awesome, Melissa. And what a great attitude for those people to have, to say, hey, it's a tactile sport, so we welcome blind people. That's awesome, because you don't hear that. Okay, Penny has a question. Let's see if we can unmute her.
Not to say a question, because I kind of know the person who's speaking. It was more a comment, because I wanted to follow up what you had said, Casey. If you go to moveunited.org, I think it is, they are part of the U.S. Paralympic program, and they have such chapters all over the country. They're the old, if you know, Disabled Sports USA or something. They changed their name like last year. I don't know why. I think the Move United thinks, no, never mind. It's a whole other issue. But Move United, they have, and all these adaptive programs that are at these ski areas are you easily find them, because what happens, they very rarely have the same name as a mountain. And also there's programs, there's programs in every state, even if they're not a ski mountain. There's other adaptive sports organizations that are on there. And just like Melissa had said, they basically are there for all kinds of disabilities, which is even great for kids who may have multiple disabilities to be able to experience sports. And even though, like you would say, oh, these adaptive programs at these ski mountains are only one season only open for one season. No, they almost all of them are all year round. They'll usually do a winter program and also a summer program. So they might do a day of bike riding for different kids in the summer, and they also do adults too. And they might do hiking, and they have different. They might do other things. So it's a really good way to find out what's out there for people who are really. Because what's really cool about sports is a good. People who get involved with these programs have realized people with disabilities, including people who are blind, can do these things. They just need to be adopted in an appropriate way. So I just want to make sure everyone knew that it's a really good resource. Abby's been part of many different adaptive programs, probably like 3 or 4 in our state. And of course, she's part of the National Ability Center in Utah is her national team that she's on. And they are fantastic also. And there's literally these programs all over the place. I didn't know, and I don't think a lot of other people know these resources available out there. And they usually are reasonably priced, and even sometimes they'll offer, if you don't have the ability to pay, to because they're all nonprofits, to pay what you can, or they'll offer scholarships. I just wanted to make sure that was mentioned, because I just know everything that's involved with her wonderful thing. And I do say it is really good to see what your kid can do, but I also think it's just fun just letting your kid get out there and just do some things. And I think sometimes it's okay to have like when Abby did track and field, we did with skiing, we were all worried. We got all into making sure there was a meeting for the coaches and everything to make sure it was all set. Because one, skiing's dangerous. But when she did track and field, I didn't even call anybody. They already knew her from skiing. So I'm like, if they want to have any concerns, they didn't say anything. Abby went to the team meetings like everybody else. She just did what she wanted. It was completely hands off. I mean, she's in high school, so it was a good way for her to self-advocate for herself. And I was like, so sometimes it's okay to like throw your kid, if your kid wants to just do something and see if it works out. And it's okay if it doesn't work out. It's okay if they tried soccer and it was not a fun experience. But I think just trying sometimes is part of their fun. And I'll shut up now.
That's good. And I like your comment that it's okay to try something, even if it doesn't work out, it's okay. I remember with my niece, we got a great deal of pushback from the community when we wanted her to play T-ball. So we pushed for it. She got to play T-ball. It was very successful. We had a system worked out. And then at the end of the year, she said, I don't like T-ball anymore. I don't want to play ball anymore. So it's okay to let them try something and then decide that they don't like it. So Melissa has her hand up.
Thanks. That's a really good point, Casey. And just really quickly, I think also sometimes people are worried about kind of as their child gets older and things become more competitive, where does that leave the child, particularly if their vision gets worse, or something very like Katie was saying, basketball. I thought for my daughter, soccer, and that was kind of always in the back of my mind, like, oh, I want her to do this, but how is this going to work out as she gets older? Will she be able to play high school soccer or not? And I didn't know the answer. I wanted to let her try if she wanted to, but she has sort of now, as a almost 11-year-old, sort of said, I liked soccer. I liked doing that. I'm glad I got to play. I don't think that's really for me. And she does say now, I don't think I could see, like, it would be hard. Soccer would be hard for me to be able to see who's going where, and it moves really fast, and that just doesn't make me feel comfortable. But I love gymnastics, and that's really what I want to do now. And so again, the more that you let your child try, and if they're really passionate and they're really good, they're going to figure out a way to play. And if they decide, like Casey's niece or my daughter, like, hey, I don't really like this anymore, or I'm glad I tried it, but it's not for me, that's also totally fine, particularly because I think they also sort of tend to self-select and pick sports that really speak to them. And my daughter's always been a climber and a swinger and a cartwheeler. And so, gymnastics makes total sense. I can't wait. I'm really hopeful that the gym that we were in is able to open back up in the fall so she can start doing gymnastics again.
Yes, there's hope out there, Melissa. We're slowly opening back up, and like my daughter with water therapy and things like that, they're slowly taking small groups of people. So I see hope out there that will open back up, and our kids can get back in these gyms and the activities that they love and that they need. Okay, so Donna, thank you, Abby, for being with us tonight, and we really appreciate it. And if we have more questions towards the end, then we'll have a chance for question and answer again. Donna, do we have a door prize?
Yes, let's spin the wheel here.
I love the wheel.
I love the wheel too. That was such a good idea. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, Katie Olson, congratulations.
Okay. All right, so we want to keep the theme of springing forward, but our next panelist is an O&M instructor, and we want to hear from her about how we can start the process of getting our kids up and moving and getting them outdoors. So Kristen Sims is going to join us to talk about it from an O&M perspective. So Kristen, thank you for being with us tonight, and we're anxious to hear what, we think it's so difficult. We think we have to have a professional tell us when to do things, but Katie and Abby and Melissa have told us ways tonight that we didn't have to have that, but we want to know from a professional's perspective, how do we get them up and moving?
Well, hi. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, good. So yes, I am a professional and I'm also a mom. So those are the most important letters, right? MOM. I do have a lot of letters behind my name. My name is Kristen Sims. I know a lot of you that are on this call. I teach blind and visually impaired students and have been for the past, I don't know if I can count that high, but for the past 16, 17 years, I have been teaching blind students. And my very first love was teaching cane travel. And I heard Joe Cutter speak, and Joe Cutter was a huge proponent of early movement and early exploration. And so I take that to heart, and I work with babies all the way up through Katie Olson, actually one of my graduate students now. So I am her cane travel instructor, but I've worked with babies all the way up to adults. And I can't tell you enough about how important it is for early movement experiences, but quality movement experiences as well. There's a difference between movement and active movement. You can have passive movement, and unfortunately, this is what a lot of our blind children are subjected to, which means that they are passengers in their movement experiences. Now, there are times whenever it's important to be a passenger. I personally prefer to be a passenger on a plane. I don't want to fly it myself. But there are times whenever I want to be in charge of my actions and I want to be in charge of where I'm going. And it's important that we start that from a very early age with kids, is that they have the ability to move and go. I once listened to a presentation by Joanne Wilson, and she was talking about how you train an elephant. And it was a very powerful, speech, but she was talking about the way they train elephants to walk in a circus is to restrain them when they're very young. They teach them that they can't get out of the circle because they're restrained. Those those little elephants, those little baby elephants want to be able to move and roam like they're like nature is telling them to do. However, we or not me because I don't own any elephants. Um the circus employees would restrain their movement, and then that teaches them and trains them to stay in that circle so that the bigger the elephant gets, the smaller the rope then needs to be. So if we restrain our children, our blind children at or any children at a very sorry guys, it's been a long night for me, a young age, then we will teach them that they have to get permission from another, or they have to be a passenger in life, or that they shouldn't go beyond a place that they perceive as safe. They shouldn't explore. We're teaching them that not to explore the world. And that's not what we want for our children, right? We want our children to feel freedom of movement. And so you can do this in lots of different ways. From a very early time, teach your children that the world exists beyond what they can see or feel by creating some space for them to play and get them to move around, putting them on their tummy time and getting them to reach out. Those are all important skills for all children, but it's especially important that we do that with our blind children. And we put things just out of their reach, especially little noisy toys or favorite things or mom just out of their reach so that they will reach a little beyond what they can touch. And they start to realize that the world is a lot bigger. After that point, once we're crawling and moving, realize that the time to fall, like I think has been said many times earlier, the time to fall is when we're closer to the ground, right? So yes, nobody wants to see their little toddler fall over, but they're much closer to the ground whenever they're only about 2 feet tall or 1 foot tall. So it's a time that we're falling. And remember that little babies' bodies, their bones are made of cartilage at that point. So we're very unlikely to break things. Much better to learn to fall and the correct way to fall at a young age when it's naturally occurring and developmentally appropriate. Because it hurts a lot later. I can tell you, having just celebrated my 40th birthday and thinking, oh yeah, I can get out there and start riding a bike. So it hurts a lot more when you get older to fall. So we want our kids to be able to develop at it typically, and so there's lots of little games to play with toddlers as well. I like push toys that you can get in the store, little popcorn, the little popper that you can push. That's a one-handed device. And I introduced the cane very early. The cane does a lot of things. It's a tool to detect and preview your environment, but it also makes noise. And whenever you tap that cane on the ground, you can get a lot of information about your room. Echolocation is a really, really great skill, and it's something that we want our kids to learn to do naturally. And they do whenever you take them to a shopping mall, which I know we're not doing a whole lot of. They may make noises in that room, in those echoey rooms, and play with the sound. And instead of shushing our kids, let's play with the noise with them and make other noises and see how big the room is. And then if we hear a sound off in the distance, let's go see what it is. Go find things that we hear and realize that the world is not, the world is tangible and it's available to us if we're willing to go towards it. When kids get a little older, they may start seeing someone like me. I start working with children as early as 3 years old, but again, I've worked with babies as well. Currently, I have several 3-year-olds, and they are so fun. These kids are ready to move, so they have gotten that beginning stuff. Some of the things we work on is building up our positional words. In front of, behind, right, left, and we stomp our feet we do and we get on our toes, and we play with all the different ways in which we can walk, using big giant steps and little bitty tiny steps. We tap our cane very loudly, and we move it really huge, and then we bring it, we make it really quiet, and we slide it on the ground and see what different textures we can find. I utilize sleep shades or learning shades or occlusion or whatever you want to call them. Sometimes they're just little blacked out sunglasses. And sometimes they're the learning shades like you might get in a Bell Academy or at any summer programs. And we call those our binoculars because they make our other senses a little stronger, like binoculars do. And they don't actually, but we can pay attention to them more. And kids like anything that's fun. So we usually do some different little games. When we put on our binoculars, we go on a cane hunt. So we've got our binoculars, we've got our cane, and then if you know the song Going on a Bear Hunt, then it says, I'm not scared, I'm not scared. And so the kids really get into it and they enjoy it. And we tap our cane around, we find all the textures we can find, our obstacles. We go around them and we talk about them, if we can go over them or under them or through them or around them. Sometimes I have to tell my adult students to go on a bear hunt because they can't get around their obstacles either. Without having to think it through. But this is beginning problem solving skills, and it's really good for kids to learn it. It's a natural thing, and it's something that we can show them they can overcome any obstacle that they find. It's just got to find a way around it. Some other little games that you might enjoy playing with your child is to go on a nature walk, and you can do the same sort of thing. You can go through a park or go around your neighborhood and find interesting sounds, and then go explore those sounds. Like, oh, this street is a little echoey, so let's go see what's down there. I bet it, and make some predictions and see if they come, if you were right. One of my students heard a buzzing noise at the end of a street, so they were like really worried about what that buzzing noise was and couldn't, just kept thinking, what is that sound? What is that sound? And so I was like, well, let's go find it. Let's go see what we can find. And we went down the street and we found the buzzing noise, which was it was an air conditioner. So, which we have a lot of in Louisiana. So we we went out, we sought our, we heard something, we found it, we married the sound to the touch. So now we have a full concept of things that make that sound. We know that is an air conditioner. And so next time we hear it, we can go, oh, there's an air conditioner. And guess what? Now we can use it to know kind of what street that is, because that's the street we walked down, and we have a memory of that. And we start working on building our mental map. Another really fun thing to do, speaking of sounds and things like that, is to go on a scavenger hunt. See if you live near a park, or if you live near a place that has flags or there's music playing out, you can go and find all different things. One convention, we did a sound scavenger hunt in the hotel, and had to find people who worked in different environments and recorded it on a little handheld recorder. Of course, now people can do it on their cell phones, so I just dated myself a little bit there. But it can be a lot of fun to go see if you can find people in your neighborhood. Keep, of course, be socially distant, and shop. Learn to shop by pulling the grocery cart behind you and navigate the grocery aisles and just explore. That's one of my favorite rainy day activities to do with my students, is to take them into a store and really just explore the store without using a shopping assistant or anything like that. Like, sometimes we'll use the Seeing AI on my phone, or if they have a phone, they can use their own app, and we will look at stuff. But just going in the toy department and checking out all the toys on the shelf that we can reach, and really just looking around. A lot of times, I know I'm bad about this as a parent, we go into stores and we go get what we need and we get out of there, especially Walmart. I can't stay in there too long or I come out with no paycheck. So so I try to limit my visits so that I can pay rent or mortgage rather. Anyway, but the we don't have that, where my kids maybe were sitting in the buggy or getting the visual, feedback of what all is in a store. If your blind child is sitting in the buggy, or cart, whatever you call that where you are, they're not getting that. They're just hearing some sounds and they're not able to connect that. So they're not building the concepts maybe. And so it's important to let them have some time, like go with a plan to explore and really look around and take the time. Because here's what happens if you don't take the time to let your child explore, the time runs out and they become adults that have never explored. And then, they might have to, get something on their own, and there may not be a shopping assistant for them to, to find something. And they need to be able to use some different alternate techniques. And you don't want them to think that things just appear, no magic fairies, right? Another fun activity to do is it's an indoor activity that'll encourage active movement, climbing, like I've heard earlier in the discussion, and also balance is the ground is lava. Now I'm sure most of us probably played this as a child. It was back whenever there wasn't so much to see on TV and nothing was on demand. I know that my brother and I played the ground is lava quite a bit. And so that the purpose of that game is that you are not allowed to touch the ground. Your cane can find things. It's a great cane activity. And everyone in the family can put on shades and use a cane and find pillows on the ground and places where they can climb to get to not touch the floor and make their way around the house or the apartment or wherever you live. It's a really fun game, and it requires creative problem solving, which is a really great skill for cane travel. Walking on trails, and when I say trails, I mean like maybe not paved trails. We kind of live in a city, so my kids are bad about just thinking that a trail is a paved sidewalk that cuts through some trees. But going off trail, off the paved trail and going out into the woods to where you can feel those textures with your cane. You can tell and find roots of trees, and you can learn to step over things, and that requires a lot of balance and agility. Going hiking, you may want to have a hiking stick, or and use that as a cane, or sometimes you can use there are some like you can buy hiking sticks that will help you find stuff, and you use them very much like a cane, but you might want to use two of them, and use one more to check your area in front of you, and your child. So but it can be really fun to go for a hike and really get out and into nature, especially since today is Earth Day, I believe, or at least this week was Earth Day. I'm sure someone knows, I don't know. And it's Earth Day. See, so get out in nature. Finding different kinds of trees or different kinds of bushes, picking the leaves off and making a little book of your nature walk is a fun thing to do. You can do that in a neighborhood that's got bushes and stuff. I tell my students, let's not pick the flowers that cost money. when we're at the park, but we can pick as many leaves as we want to. And then you can take those leaves back and try to identify them. Um, uh, let's see. Oh, going to parks, neighborhood parks. I know a lot of those are getting open, especially now that, things are getting a little more under control, and but public parks are starting to open. And one thing that a lot of parents will ask me or they're worried about is their children using a cane at the park on the slide and going up on play structures and stuff, and where, should they encourage them to use the cane up there if they're, and I say it's kind of a judgment call. Some kids that I've had prefer to go with the cane, and so they should absolutely go with the cane. Most canes have a little handle at the top. A lot of my students use a D cane, so it's kind of got a little bungee cord at the top. But the Chris Park cane that's from the Free White Cane program also has a little strap on it that you can put on your hand, and when you go down a slide, you just let that cane either go off to the side of the slide, or you can let it go down kind of with you. Then the cane can find the ground. A lot of rain here in Louisiana, so we do have a lot of wash away under the slide, so they can't tell how deep it is when they get off the slide. But there are some kids who prefer to store their cane next to the slide and then just trail along the slide, find the stairs, and go up and around. Both, as long as you're feeling free to move, I don't find anything wrong with that. I don't think it has to be something that's forced. In fact, I never force canes on kids. Like if a child is going to find a benefit from a cane, I encourage it to be used. But I don't say you have to use this to go somewhere, because I want them to choose the cane. I want them to choose the independence. Now, if they're not choosing to use a cane, they can't then just choose to use my arm either. So, because that's not active movement. And that's what I'm about, is active movement. So some things that sometimes we take kids swimming, we take them, rock climbing has been mentioned. Sometimes we play hula hoops, hopscotch, where you can hop in the hula hoops. That kind of gives you a tactile, feeling. We go and explore it first. You can get, we'll do mazes out of little flooring tiles. That you can put on the ground and then try and make a maze. It's very, similar to like the lava game. We play Ring Around the Rosie and learn our compass directions. It's very important to know north, south, east, and west. I have a really annoying song. I played the Bell Academy last summer, and now it's stuck in everyone's head like an earworm. And I'll spare you guys. But it's a really good cardinal directions song that's part of Go Noodle. Go Noodle has a lot of really good activities. It was free last summer, and it might be free again this summer. It may still be free for parents. Go Noodle has a lot of, especially in their indoor recess section, they do describe a lot of the activities that they're doing. There are a couple that they maybe don't describe very well, but we just make up our own when they're not describing the activity. But a lot of the indoor recess on Go Noodle is descriptive. So they'll tell you what they want you to do at the beginning of the game or the activity. They'll tell you all the different moves. They'll talk them out, and then you can just follow along. Like they'll say, chunk the meatballs, and so they've already told you that they want you to lay it up like a basketball, and this gives me an opportunity, if I'm doing this as part of our O&M lesson, to talk to them about how you would lay up a basketball. And if we can get to the gym and get a basketball, we'll practice that. Now, I feel bad because I'm the only person who's speaking who's never been on a team or is very active. So, I mean, I do walk all day long for a living, so that kind of counts, right? But I'm not, was never a basketball player. I tried, not great. I tried dancing for a little while, it didn't work for me, but I do encourage it. And I think everybody should learn some of those skills. like Melissa said, the baseball. I mean, I was a teacher of blind students and I did state testing. The baseball diamond is on there. So if you've never experienced a baseball diamond, they may have that in their state testing one day and not have ever experienced a baseball diamond and may think it is like a rhombus. But a baseball diamond is different. And so when they're describing things like that, you know, it's important to have a reference point. So I always found like, you know, I kind of did the same thing as a teacher when I was in the public school system, as I encouraged my students to not just take APE, or I would encourage the APE teacher to work in a student's PE class, in the gen ed PE class. So I didn't want my students to be playing cards all year when other kids were learning to play basketball and learning the rules of volleyball and learning the rules of soccer. And I said they should be there in those classes, even if they couldn't participate fully because of maybe physical limitations. They should, I would make sure they had accessible balls and equipment. And I finally got a really, really awesome APE teacher who worked really well with me, and we had the same goals in mind, that our kids should, and she got us involved with the Gumbo Games, which was a Louisiana-based Paralympics. My kids who were in more unique classrooms, situations where they were doing more foundational or functional skills, they were able to participate in Special Olympics, which is different than the Paralympics. So the Special Olympics games were really great, and because they fully participated. They did bowling, and they did golf, and they went they did some other stuff. Oh, they did track and field events, and all of our kids, even some of my students ran, or they would walk, and they had a guide with them. And one of my students got really pretty good at javelin throw. So and we would all go out there and support them. I had a student who was very into football, and I went to many a football game, and she told me I was terrible at describing football. So she made friends with the person who was the announcer, and he told him what she needed to know as far as going to the football, like what she was missing from the football announcing. And he started announcing the games differently so that she could participate more, be and she loves football, still loves football. She's an adult now though. But I'm terrible at describing football. So but I helped facilitate that relationship so that she could be involved with that. And in fact, I think she ended up working with the football team one year to so they let her sit on the sidelines, stuff like that. Anyway, and I had another student who was the team manager. He was the equipment manager. He loved football too, and he would have his cane and bring the equipment out and help the guys, and got to go with them to they went to the state playoffs, and he went with them, and he would run up and down the field. His brother was on the team, and so he was very, very active and involved with the football team. And again, the APE teacher just facilitated that relationship. The APE teacher and I facilitated that relationship, but he did it all by himself. And so there's lots of different ways to be involved, and that kids can have that excitement about sports and recreation and movement. I feel like I'm just talking now. Is there anything else that I didn't say that I should have said?
Well, I think you hit on a lot of good points, Kristen, and Melissa has a question for you.
Okay.
It's actually more a couple comments, and all the things that you're saying, and you are making me want to work with little kids again in the worst way, because that is just the most fun to see kids just discover their world. There's nothing like that, and to help their parents understand that they can discover their world and be safe and be active. There's nothing like that. I also wish you were here in Maryland, because I'd love it if my kids could have you as an instructor. But anyway, two things quickly about playgrounds and canes. Number one, that might be, and I'm much more a person who's very much likes the straight cane for many, many reasons. But on a playground, as a blind parent, that's really where I found a folding cane super duper helpful. And as a blind kid, it would have been super helpful to be able to fold a cane small and have it maybe, I don't know, on a belt or in a pocket or somehow attached to me, so that I could use it when I wanted it, but could kind of tuck it out of the way when I didn't. And especially on a playground, sometimes you don't know, like it's on the bottom of something, on the bottom of a play structure, and then all of a sudden you're way at the top and you're like, wait a minute, where are those stairs? I really wish I had my cane. I mean, I had so many experiences like that when I was a kid, and mostly because I wasn't really encouraged to use my cane a heck of a lot. My cane mostly stayed in my closet unless I was on an O&M lesson. That's a whole other topic for another day. But
So
I think
many
that's really
times.
important. Yeah. But so that's important. And so certainly having that folding cane available would be really good, and thinking about cool ways to be able to kind of attach it so that it doesn't fall out or get lost. The second thing is, could you talk a little bit about recess and kids and how you help orient kids to their school playground? Because this is something I've been thinking about so much lately. I had a very rudimentary understanding of what my playground was like as a kid. I knew all the equipment that was there. I couldn't get from one to the other unless I had a friend take me. And I think about it now and I think, oh my gosh, how much more comfortable I would have been if I had been encouraged to use my cane on the playground. I would have been a lot safer. I could have walked from one thing to the other. If friends forgot that they were playing with me or didn't want to play with me anymore, I wouldn't be stuck somewhere. Like, it would have been so much better. And I hear about so many blind kids that the parents realize eventually at recess, all they're really allowed to do is sit and read a book or sit and play cards or whatever else. So what would you
Sometimes,
say?
Melissa, they let them go play with the para.
Yeah, well, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No, that too. So
Yes.
what would you say, or what do you do to sort of, first of all, encourage parents to make sure they know really what's going on at recess? And secondly, what do you do to help kids know about the playground, and also about kind of joining in with the games that happen on a playground?
Absolutely. So I do, I have a playground plan. So with little kids, little bitty kids, whenever they're still kind of doing that parallel play, and they may be experiencing, like have a playground. And I'd say that that continues up into well into kindergarten is the parallel play. So they're not really forming a lot of tight-knit friendship groups. They kind of play near each other. So it's important that, so that's where I kind of encourage like the teacher to kind of kind of have a buddy system there. Now, that being said, my students are required, I say, I'm not going to force a cane on you, but you are required to use that. And you're, required to, I don't want any 5-year-old should not be responsible for another 5-year-old, because then you're creating a situation in which the sighted child now feels superior to the blind child, and the blind child feels inferior to the sighted child because, look, they put this 5-year-old in charge of me. And if you think that they don't think that, then you're wrong. They do. They pick it up. And maybe not in those exact terms, but there is a power dynamic that is being created there. And so it doesn't need to be like that. And I discourage that kind of action. But during the early times, whenever we are learning about, whenever they're doing cane travel instruction, we go and explore the playground. We talk about sun cues, we use landmarks, we use sound cues. And that's all very dependent on their environment. We talk about, and I know, I try to find out with office where, because particular play areas are for particular grades, right? So, and especially during COVID, there's some other specific rules on where kids can play and where they cannot. So I get those down, and then we talk about what those boundaries are, and the student and I go and explore those areas fully. We spend a couple of weeks sometimes doing that, and we'll work towards, getting that all kind of mapped out in our brain of where it is. Now, we also talk about how to ask appropriate questions of our peers. So, if we do need a little assistance getting to this particular slide that we like, we talk about how do we get to that slide that we like, and if we can't find it, how can we ask our friend, without our friend feeling like they then have to drive us there, with their arm. So, and learning ways that they can walk with a peer without holding on to them, or by touching them in a way that, or like, keeping up with them in a way that, is where they would have more freedom of movement. So instead of, someone grabbing a hand of the blind child can touch the back of someone's arm with their non-cane hand. And I also encourage blind children to use whatever hand they want to. It does not, and I encourage them to switch their hands if they feel like it. I think being able to use both hands is important. So there's not just one hand that we're using our cane with. So we have a plan that, they and that person that they pick should be this child's preference. So then when you get up in years, first grade, second grade, those kind of friendship bonds start happening, and that child should, choose a person that they, choose a group to hang out with or whatever. What I don't want them to choose is to hang out next to the wall. And sometimes when children are doing that, it's because they don't feel free to explore their environment, or they're nervous, or they're scared about their, their world. So they may be afraid to ask someone for help. And so it's something that needs to be discussed. And I, as a travel instructor, will try to ask those questions, because sometimes people just think, oh no, well, he just wanted to read his book. Or, when I was the teacher and the Braille teacher, they would be like, oh, can I come in here for recess? I need to finish such and such. No, you need to go out, because socialization is an important part of the childhood experience. And so we want to encourage that movement out there. I'm not saying it's not okay to use buddies to get around the playground, but you need to know that when the bell rings, you need to know where the building is, and sound sources where you can help get yourself organized. It's very easy to follow a crowd if you know how to do it. And so those kinds of things are important for kids to learn early, and to be, and they need to be responsible for their own travel, and need to know that they're responsible for their own travel, because you don't want them to get worried about being lost on the playground. So then they just don't play. Well, when they're not playing in those early years, they're not developing friendships. They're not developing, because any other time in the classroom, they're just sitting and learning. Just sitting and learning. I was a teacher. I am a teacher, so they're not just sitting and learning, but you know what I'm saying. They are not interacting with each other socially. And so they need to be able to have that time. All children need that time. That's why we have recess. And then as kids get older, if everything's been falling into place, there doesn't need to really be any discussion, because they will be naturally kind of gravitating towards that. Now, they may find that they are you may find that your child is just an indoor child, and they find their group of other indoor kids. But even those little indoor kids have a little tight-knit group, because believe me, I know the indoor kids, they were my people. And so they may want to sit around and play a game, off to the side at recess, and be in the shade so they don't get, too hot and sweaty. So, so those kinds of things are important to do, but it's something you need to make a plan for when your child enters school. Like I'm expecting my child to play, and let the school know that if your child falls on the grass, it's probably going to be okay. They don't need to get, they're not made of glass. They're made of the same materials as everybody else, and they should be treated, similarly. And so I think it takes some pressure off, because in this world that we kind of live in and have been living in since I can remember, that schools get very nervous about any possible litigation. They don't want anyone to get hurt out there. And if you say, oh, well, my child can't see, they're immediately going to think, oh, well, they need to be watched. And so you just kind of say, it's okay. I understand they're going to get bumps and bruises. They may get a little lost. They may not make it in on, I understand that this kind of stuff is going to happen. I still want them to be fully participating and explain to them the importance of that socialization.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. The playground is always a question for our blind students. Penny, I see your hand up. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. Kristen, when I heard you talk about the trained elephants analogy with early childhood and movement, it was such a big aha moment for me, because when Addie became blind at 6, everyone wanted to wrap her up in bubble wrap. And one of the big things I did when within a year when she became blind was go to the National Federation of the Blind National Convention. And so I very quickly when they started, the school literally was like, wanted to have a rule that all the doors had to be a certain direction. So Abby, at a school of 400, they would make sure the doors were going the right direction for Abby. I'm like, well, if she's using her cane, she'll be okay. What's the big deal if she hits the door? And like it's was initially an old school. They had tape on the floor. I'm like, it's okay if she falls. She knocked out falls downstairs. It's all one level, and they were shocked. But I really felt like my flexibility of letting her just do whatever she wanted to do made it easier for her to have confidence as she got older to do the things she's doing now. Yeah, and I actually think that's related to realizing to those foundations like structured discovery and letting kids just move instead of having these fundamentals to question these rules. You must do this before you do this kind of things, and I think it really. I was really, I don't know, that just blew me away. So I just wanted to say that.
Oh, thank you. Well, and thank Joanne, because she's the one who said it, and I went, oh, that makes so much sense. But yeah, I've always thought that school is a place for learning. So why would we not be learning to get around? Why would we not be learning how to get ourselves out of I call them a pickle when we get lost. It's a pickle. We just got ourselves in a pickle. And, we're not lost. We just haven't figured out where we are yet.
Okay, good stuff. Really good stuff that we've talked about tonight. Lots of information. So I don't see any more hands raised. So if Donna will give us our final door prize for the evening, that would be great.
Okay, let's spin the wheel.
Last chance. Oh, looky there.
Abby Duffy, congratulations.
Awesome. Very good. And Abby, so that you know, when it showed your name, it's a big wheel that spins around and it has everybody's name on it. And then when it landed on your name, it's like fireworks go off all over the screen to show that it's excitement that you won. So thank you each and every one for joining us tonight. A lot of good information was covered here tonight. This will go up on our YouTube, and our webpage is being revised right now. But once the webpage is revised, then this will be on the webpage. So I just want to leave you with one comment that a very wise woman taught me. And there is research behind this, that if we get movement going, then it increases exploration. And with exploration, we have more experiences. And with experiences, we start to build cognition. And with cognition, we start to build language. So movement truly is the base for learning. So thank you for joining us tonight. And remember, third Thursday every month, and look for our advertisements for next month on the topic for third Thursday. Thank you.